Hello everyone, this is Knud from IoT Analytics here in our office in Hamburg. With me is Eugenio. Hey.
Yeah, hi.
We wanted to update you on the first conferences of the year, namely Mobile World Congress in Barcelona and also Embedded World. Eugenio went to Mobile World Congress, I went to Embedded World. Both happened last week, and we wanted to share with you our main takeaways. So maybe to give you some context, MWC is 110,000 visitors. And it's obviously a huge event. Embedded World's a bit smaller, 35,000 I believe, and you can see it's not as big as MWC, nevertheless very important, two important conferences. What were the big themes in Barcelona when you were there?
Well, the main buzzword was intelligent connectivity. So as soon as you get to the event location, you will see this like welcome to the era of intelligent connectivity. Intelligent connectivity, as we wrote in a recent blog post, is the combination of 5G, IoT, and AI. However, as soon as you got inside the event location, you would realize how the main focus was, in any case, 5G. 5G was everywhere. Every stand, every exhibitor was either talking about 5G or exhibiting something about 5G. So today, my main takeaways from this conference will all be about 5G.
Yeah, and I mean, I remember a couple of years ago when I attended, it was only Ericsson talking about 5G, it seemed, and now and 5G seemed so far away. It's such a futuristic concept, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah. So I can share on the Embedded World, which is geared slightly towards hardware companies. 5G actually didn't play that much of a role. I mean, yes, there was some, but it was clearly the AI part. So if you talk about intelligent connectivity, the AI part was clearly in focus, and I will share with you a few details here. So maybe let's go through your takeaways. I think you prepared something like 5 takeaways. So
yes,
shoot it.
5 takeaways.
Yeah.
So number 1, if you attended the event, you would have heard so many times the sentence 5G is here. So my main takeaway is like, if 5G is not here yet, not quite yet at least, or at least make me rephrase it, the version of 5G that is here is not the complete version. It's just a partial version, which is based on a partial standard, and basically is just an enhancement of current LTE networks. Basically, right now, companies have just started, operators have just started rolling out 5G networks in a small places, or one of the small places in like some localized hotspots around big cities in the US, in South Korea, and some other locations around the world. But these networks will not be deployed on a global scale very soon. So for the next 12 to 24 months, we will only have some pockets of 5G coverage in some areas of the world. So, I mean...
Or some companies calling something 5G, which is not.
Yes, that's also the case. But that's why I'm saying, the 5G that is here is actually an enhancement of LTE. So that's the main thing. Plus, there have been like plenty of companies, of smartphone vendors that actually unveiled their 5G smartphones, like all of them, like Huawei, ZTE, Sony, and like all of these guys were all showcasing like new 5G smartphones. And then there was this foldable phone. So from the point of view, it was interesting, but I don't know, personally, I would not buy a 5G phone like pretty soon. So the takeaway number 2, it's about what these first 5G deployments will be about. So we said that they will be confined into some areas, but which areas? Specifically dense areas with very crowded, with a lot of people trying to use their mobile phones, trying to stream videos, trying to watch Netflix on the go, and so on. So it will be mostly for network, for enhancing these mobile broadband services, and for network densification in these very crowded areas. For example, public transport stations, or mass events location like stadiums, for example. These were the first, will be the first ones that will be targeted by the operators.
Yeah, and I think I can I heard the same at Embedded World to the 5G folks I talked to. also mentioned things like sports events, live streaming, that they see 5G playing a big role. And the setup that I saw there was, for example, 5G enabled cameras with 4K resolution that you use to stream a live sporting event, which is a big thing because obviously it goes straight to camera to cloud.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So this will be like the main use case, at least in the first few years of 5G.
Okay.
But also because the problem is about the investment required for 5G. So these first deployments are the easiest one to deploy because they require like a minimal, let's say, addition of infrastructure to the current LTE infrastructure, and they're also the easier to sell to the customers, specifically to the consumers. So this will be the first deployment to kickstart let's say the return on the investment for the operators, so they would have the money to invest on more advanced infrastructure for more advanced use cases.
Cool.
And this brings us to the takeaway number 3. Takeaway number 3 is actually about the role that 5G has in the IoT world. And by IoT we mean both the massive MTC usage scenario with low power, low cost sensors, but also for the critical IoT, the one that is needed with ultra low latency and ultra high reliability for things like automotive, industrial automation, and so on. So here actually 5G will take a little bit of time before it arrives. It requires additional infrastructure than the one that we just discussed about, because it requires more changes on the core network. It requires mobile edge computing, so adding more processing power on the edge, and this is going to take a little bit more time. The reason is not just a question of investment, which, as I said, is going to be huge for this, but also because the business cases for these applications are not there yet. Are not there not because the industry does not realize the potential, but just because the potential benefits in terms of efficiency, in terms of cost savings, they still are not good enough, or maybe are not expressed well enough to the public to justify, a strong interest or having end users buying this stuff straight away. So it's going to take some time before this is deployed. And yes, takeaway number 4 is something that I've noticed by going to the stands during MWC. There were plenty of companies that were showcasing their solutions, and there was a lot of focus on some use cases. For example, in the automotive sector, if we go beyond the infotainment stuff, I saw lots of interest toward this vehicle to everything kind of communication.
V2X.
V2X,
yeah.
Yes. In particular when it comes to road safety and efficiency, so these were very much discussed. And the role of 5G in this is because not only because it enables like this kind of communication, but also because it allows distributing the intelligence more between the end device, which would be the car, and the network, both on the edge and on the cloud, which means basically that you don't need to put lots of processing power in the car, which can make the car from one side less expensive, and on the other side it removes the problem of obsolescence of the hardware, meaning that you don't have to change the hardware every couple of years, because people actually they don't change car every
So is 5G competing with V2X then?
Well, 5G is actually a way to enable V2X. There are other technologies there, but 5G is being supported by many automotive vendors and by so many people that it's very likely that it will become, the main standard here. But not the only one.
Okay.
Not the only one. So this is actually to be seen. But the way I felt it, when I was there, is that this is the idea from all these vendors.
Cool.
Another interesting use case is for the industry. Actually, people are very, very interested in this, very excited about the deployment of 5G in industrial use cases, specifically when it comes to automation and to the control of robots. So, for example, cloud robotics is going to be a very good example of these use cases, like in the case of automotive, because you can control the robot and automate it without having too much processing power on it, which can make the robots less expensive, smaller, and but also mobile. That's the other thing. You don't need to rely on cables, and that means that, for example, when you have all these robotic arms and all these automated machines along an assembly line, if you want to reconfigure or to rearrange this assembly line to make changes into products, you can do that very quickly, very easily with 5G because you don't have any cables.
No.
So it's very easy to do that. And one more use case that I would like to just highlight is video surveillance. So with 5G, you can use mobile cameras to basically transmit data to the cloud, and then this real-time video analytics on those, which allows very interesting use cases. Like one that was really interesting was showcased by Intel at the booth. It was about retail. So they were showing this example of a shop where people would just go in it, would just pick up stuff, I don't know, shampoo, fruit, whatever, any product, and then they would just leave the shop without going through the till. There was a system of cameras that was able to track what people were taking, and so they would, in theory, this system would be able to charge people without having them to go through the till, basically speeding up the whole process, but also being able to detect any attempt of theft and this kind of thing. So this was a nice, let's say, example of the potential of this technology.
And this would be a prime example for intelligent connectivity, going back to the theme, because it combines 5G, IoT, and AI.
Exactly.
But it is something that I think is similar to what Amazon has already in place in their Amazon stores, I would assume, right? Yeah, I would think, but I don't know what the technology is behind that.
Probably they don't rely on 5G yet.
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
But you had 5 points, right?
Yeah, the last one is about the role of edge and cloud computing vendors in 5G. So we discussed about mobile edge computing, and so edge computing vendors, they had a big presence there. So people, guys like HP or Dell, they were massively talking about 5G, and you can realize why mobile edge computing is required not just to distribute the intelligence, towards the network, but also to enable that ultra low latency that is required by many of these applications. On top of that, with the virtualization of the network, also cloud vendors are going to be very much involved in this 5G thing. So you will have there is this thing about service-based architecture and the delivery of microservices that are all based on the cloud, and so they can be based and delivered to cloud platform like the ones at Amazon or Google or Microsoft have. So these players are going to just thrive in the 5G era. At least this was my impression.
But they have more bandwidth to push this into applications that rely on 5G.
Exactly, because who is providing these microservices will need some kind of cloud.
The hardware statement is interesting in the way that, in a way, 5G competes with edge computing, because you can either do it directly to the cloud, or you can do everything at the edge, and you don't need 5G and the cloud. So in many cases for autonomous driving, that's always the discussion: do you need 5G or not?
Yeah.
But what you're saying is essentially, even for 5G, you need edge computing, because you need to have a fine balance between what you are what you're managing through 5G and what through the edge, and how that plays together.
Yes,
and I guess even more, right?
Yeah. Well, in this case, I see mobile. So the edge computing would be more like application oriented. For example, take the video surveillance case. You could have most of the processing, about this video analytics being performed on the edge, and then sent to a central location, just the results. So for example, we detected this strange behavior, we detected this and that. So just notification to the cloud, because you want to reduce the bandwidth to send on the cloud. On the other hand, when it comes to core 5G network, this is going to be on the cloud. So when it comes to network management, the provisioning of network services, that's going to be heavily based in the cloud. So this balance between the two is going to be good for both edge and cloud computing players.
I think we should mention at this point that Eugenio is currently writing a big report on the topic of 5G. And so a lot of this is will be put into the report, but obviously also more going into the market model, into other things. Expect that in the second quarter of this year, right? Yeah. Should I quickly talk about embedded world?
Yes.
So I didn't. So you spent a full 3 days going through. I spent 2 days at embedded world. I'll keep it a little bit shorter. You just said edge computing. I think embedded world. That's exactly where embedded world comes in, because that's the heritage of embedded world. So like I said, 5G wasn't actually that much of a topic, but AI and edge computing and the combination of AI at the edge dominated the conference program, the speeches, and also the marketing slogans you could see. So there were plenty of examples. Intel, for example, showcased their AI program that they have with developers. They said something like they have 1,000, I think they said 700 something solutions right now that is based on their small AI platform that they make available. They say basically for them to make the right chips, they need to understand what all the people will do at the end of the day with this. From an AI point of view, you see companies like that going into. So for example, another chip vendor, Microchip, had a good presentation there of a camera-based system. I think vision by itself right now plays a huge role and is one of those early applications for AI, and they were showcasing how they can, for example, identify animals in a farm. We have a lot of animals, and they were showcasing the architecture that's behind it, and how that is really evolving with deep learning right now, with several convolutional layers and things like that. So it was quite interesting to see. Other companies also focus on AI at the edge. For example, AdLink, gateway company that I talked to, they had a showcase. It was pretty simple. They had a meter, a very old meter, and they put a camera in front of the meter, and they let the camera essentially read the meter. And because the meter, turns in different ways, and the picture doesn't always look the same, at the end of the day, you need some AI to make sure the number is always identified correctly. And so they have a model sitting in their gateway that has been trained in the cloud, sitting in the gateway, making sure that the picture is always correctly identified, and then reads from the stupid meter and puts that into a digital world. And they said that actually in this case makes sense in some very ruggedized environments where you might have some restrictions in regards to using electricity to make a smart meter, because everything could explode, something like that. It was interesting. There were a lot more. I don't want to share all of them, but AI really now taking, you can really see, and it's real AI. It's not the bullshit AI anymore that we had a few years ago. People are really going into deep learning and machine learning, and they're doing stuff with that. I think that's really, for me, a takeaway, how that is being adopted on a large scale, or at least showcased on a large scale right now. I don't know about adoption, but that's definitely showcasing. The other one that the other insight. So I'm only going to share 2, not 5. The second one is the cloud vendors that go hardware, and I had a good chat with Microsoft that they recently released their own chip, Microsoft Sphere, and I had a very good discussion with them to understand a bit more what this chip is doing and why Microsoft is doing it. So at the end of the day, you have this chip which is not produced by Microsoft, which can be produced by anyone actually, any of the chip vendors. And so this chip is optimized for the Azure cloud, is extremely secure because it immediately authenticates, and essentially Microsoft says, if you have that, then the whole thing can be secured, and you can be sure it's going to work plug and play. So that's the whole promise. And I was under the impression that Microsoft makes money with this chip, but they actually not. So I think it's a pretty smart play. They just basically say to any chip vendor, hey, you can make a chip that is kind of Microsoft Azure enabled, and it doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't cost anyone anything. At the end of the day, if that gets adopted quite a bit, a lot of things connect naturally into Microsoft Cloud, and that's what Microsoft wants to get out of it. Microsoft actually won an award for this Microsoft Sphere at the fair. I think there was some award ceremony. Microsoft won one of those. And to go a little bit more into detail, the chip only works with Wi-Fi at the moment, but my understanding is that Microsoft is thinking about expanding this also, and I would say quite naturally this could then also go towards the cellular world and to other worlds. And so far it seems like a pretty good success story, and really shows, and you were also saying that's how the cloud vendors benefit from 5G. You can also see how the cloud vendors now extend downwards into hardware and benefit from that. So really sort of a winner takes it all, which is expanding every time we talk about it. There's more winning potential for these guys, which is pretty crazy. I would say we'll end it there. Do you have any, or unless you have any concluding thoughts, I would say we'll end it there because we've overshot our time limit already. If you would like to hear more from the fair about these topics, feel free to send us a mail. I mean, if you are a premium enterprise subscriber with IoT Analytics, you obviously get your briefing time anyways, where we can have a good chat and answer your questions. You may even ask us questions beforehand that we then take to the fair, so that we can answer some specific things that we see for you. Our next big thing is the Hanover Fair, industrial fair, coming up at the first week of April. I think we'll see a lot more 5G for industry use cases there, and how that is being implemented. Also interesting things such as machine as a service. I think you will see some. So we'll talk about that. We'll have a video there. For now, thanks for watching, and let us know if we can do anything else, if we should have a longer chat, a shorter chat, how you would like it. If you leave your comments, would be appreciated.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, bye-bye.